What is up, guys? Zorkas is here with Minuttia, and today we're going to talk about entities. Lots of interesting things to cover, so keep watching. As I mentioned, in today's videos we're going to discuss entities, and more specifically we're going to see why entities may be one of the elements that's missing from your SEO strategy. More specifically, we're going to talk about what entities are, what are the different types of entities, what are the ranking signals for entities, why our entities are important for content creation and SEO, and how to use them as part of your content SEO strategy. So let's get into it. So first of all, we're going to discuss what entities are in order for everything else that's going to follow to make sense. According to Google, an entity is a thing or concept that's singular, unique, well-defined and distinguishable. When we insert the term New York City to Google's NLP API, something that we will see later on in this presentation, it's identified, as you can see, as a location. This means that Google is capable of understanding what entities are and is also able to categorize them from a given piece of text. And this is extremely important when it comes to search engine optimization, SEO, and how results are served on the SERPs, search engine results pages. Other entities are numbers, events, addresses, organizations, dates, and more. This is something that we are going to cover in the next section. So now that we've described what an entity is, and just bear with us because we are going to dive a bit deeper into things and things will get more clear as we move forward. We are going to discuss the types of entities, something that we've also mentioned in the previous slide. So some types of entities, as you can see in the bulleted list, are person, location, organization, event, consumer good, address, date, and number. As you can see in the screenshot that we have in this slide, we have inserted the sentence how to run a video conference with Zoom into Google's NLP API, and two of the entities that were identified were Zoom, which is labeled as other, as you can see by Google, and video conference, which is labeled as an event. The way entities are identified and labeled by Google through natural language processing is extremely important when it comes to understanding what a piece of content is all about. So as you can imagine, right away we can understand the importance of entities when it comes to optimizing a piece of content or a landing page for SEO. We have to prepare our content in a way that's easy to understand by a search engine like Google, and to help the search engine make the right associations as to what the page is all about. Rest assured that the more text you add into Google's NLP API, which means that the more the text that Google has to analyze, the more the entities that you are going to end up getting. And once again, it's extremely important that you help the search engine to make the right associations as to what the page is all about, regardless if the page is 1,000 words or 10,000 words. In our example, even though when we include the term Zoom, we basically mean the company Zoom that offers web conferencing services, Google has identified it as other. That's not necessarily bad, and it basically shows us that we'd have to give even more context as to what we are referring to, in this case Zoom, the company, in order for Google to be able to understand that this is what we mean in this sentence. So, to sum things up, Google is able to extract and identify entities that later labels with different types such as person, location, organization, event, and so on and so forth. And thus, we have to be very careful as to how we structure our piece of content in order to help Google extract and identify the right entities. And as an extension, to make the right associations as to what our piece of content or our page or a piece of text is all about. Moving forward, we're going to discuss ranking signals for entities, one of the most interesting parts of this video presentation. In general, as you can see here, we have 4 ranking signals for entities. Okay, we have relatedness, notability, contribution, and prices. Let's see what each of these signals is all about. The first one is relatedness. This has to do with the relevance between two entities and their combination to make a meaning. For example, the entities best football player and Messi are often mentioned together across many pages that exist in Google's index. Thus, when you insert a search query such as best football player of all time, you get something like the one shown here. And as you can see, Google is so good at combining entities and making the right associations that all the other football players that we have in this SERP are actually capable of being considered one of the best football player of all time. The second signal that we have is notability. Notability has to do with how notable an entity is in terms of links, reviews, online mentions, and relevancy. You have to keep in mind that in general, the more notable an entity, the higher the likelihood of dominating for a particular topic or search query. For example, for the term best video conferencing software, you can see that Google is extracting results from G2. Okay? And one of the first results in this list of top 10 video conferencing software is Zoom. Now, this can be explained by the fact that in this page by G2, Zoom is the first company being featured. However, it can also be explained by the fact that Zoom is the most notable among the other players when it comes to video conferencing. And thus, in the eyes of Google, when it comes to best video conferencing software, Zoom is definitely one of the companies that have to be featured because of its notability. The next signal that we have is contribution. This signal has to do with the contribution of the entity to the topic. For example, if our topic is presentation software, as you can see, the first result on the SERPs is Vismi's presentation software landing page. Even though we can't be exactly sure what drives this signal, we know that it's mostly affected by external factors such as links and reviews. In our example, Vismi has links from almost 920 different referring domains, which shows that it's really dominant when it comes to presentations. And its overall contribution to the topic of presentations and presentation software makes the page to rank in position number 1 for the target term presentation software. Last but not least, we have prices. This signal has prices associated with a specific entity. For example, LearnWorlds, of one of our clients and one of the fastest growing SaaS in the learning industry, has various prizes and awards from various competitions and review sites. We can't be exactly sure that this helps, but as we can see, this helps in the eyes of Google establish the brand, in this case LearnWorlds, as an authoritative resource when it comes to e-learning, online courses, and so on. So these were 4 signals that we know Google is using when it comes to determining how relevant and notable a result is in order to serve it in the SERPs for a given query. At this point, even though it's a bit clear why entities are important, we're going to actually explain why entities are important when it comes to con and SEO. So, as you can see here, entities are important because they help Google make the right associations for our business and thus help us get visibility in high positions for terms that are relevant to our products and services. Without the right entities, Google cannot understand what your business is all about, and thus it cannot consider you and your website as an extension as a relevant resource based on the queries that are connected to your products and services. To make this a bit more plain and easy to digest, let's use an example that we all know, unfortunately, COVID-19. Okay. Now, if we had a website that was talking about COVID-19, we would have to talk about things like coronavirus, public health, CDC, pandemic, stay home, hand washing, healthcare provider, case counts, cloth face coverings, and so on and so forth. If we were covering those terms and those topics, then in the eyes of Google, we would be a relevant resource when it comes to the parent topic, which is COVID-19. So as you can understand, Google is constantly working by making associations and trying to understand what a website and, as an extension, a business behind the website is all about. By making these associations, Google is able to understand whether or not our website, our web page can be ranked in the top of the search results for a specific topic. Thus, it's extremely important when creating your content SEO strategy to try to understand what Google wants to see in order to consider you a relevant resource for the topics that you're interested in ranking for. Let's move on to our final section where we are going to describe how to use entities when creating content. The first thing that you need to know is that there are two ways in general on how to integrate entities into your content SEO strategy. You can do it either by using a pre-built NLP editor or by using an NLP processor like Google's NLP API that we saw earlier. So the first way to integrate entities into your content SEO strategy and start using them actively in order to get better results by helping Google make the right associations as to what your pages and your website is all about is by using an NLP editor similar to ClearScope. ClearScope is using Google's NLP API as well as IBM Watson in order to identify through extraction the entities that have to be integrated inside a piece of content based on a given term. And this will make the process of entity extraction and identification from the top ranking search results, as we just mentioned, easier and much faster. What you see in this screenshot is how the editor looks like on Google Docs through ClearScope's Google Docs add-on for the piece of content that targets the term entities for SEO. If you want to learn more about how to use ClearScope, you can visit minuttia.com/ClearScope guide in order to see how you can actually use ClearScope for content creation. The second way that you can use in order to integrate entities into your content creation process is by using an NLP processor such as Google's NLP API. In our example, we assume that we are interested in identifying important entities for the term entities for SEO. One of the top results on that SERP came from Search Engine Journal. If you copy and paste the main text, avoiding copying secondary content, comments, and so on, of the page and paste it into Google's NLP API, you are going to get something like what you see in the screenshot that we have featured here. Google's NLP API has identified and extracted entities like SEO, entities, SEO professional, content, Google, relationship, analysis, and so on. As you can imagine, doing this manually for many different pages is not easy and it's definitely time consuming. This is why we recommend using a tool like ClearScope when it comes to content creation, because it really makes the whole process of extraction much easier. And with that, we have finished with our video on entities. You now know what entities are, why they are important, what are the different types of entities, and how to use entities in order to help Google make the right associations as to what your pages are all about. Would like to thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and would like to kindly request that you leave a comment with your thoughts, comments, objections in the comment section below, and also let us know if you're using entities as part of your content SEO strategy and what were the results you had so far. Thank you very much for watching this and have a great day ahead.